now quarter till 10 on the 28th of June 2025. We're having an obvious look at a globular cluster. This is Messier 3. What I plan to do tonight with the moon at about 25 to 30% is just to do a tour of interesting studies. I call them adventitious. I'm going to begin with Western studies. Of course, Messier 3 is in, I believe it's between Bootes and Ursa Majoris. I'm not sure the constellation. Let me take a look at this and I'll give you the data on it. Messier 3. Yeah. It's in Canis Venatici, which makes perfectly good sense. Globular cluster, magnitude 6.3, 18.6 arc minutes in diameter, 33,900 light years distant. It's at right ascension 13 hours, 42 minutes, and 11 seconds, plus 28 degrees, 22 minutes, and 32 seconds in declination. And one thing I would point out, I'm operating at probably about somewhere around, let's see, it would be around 50x if we were 40x if we were on the F4. So this is probably somewhere around 75 to 80x. And I can, of course, boost it to full screen size. And there is our first view of the evening. Splendid globular cluster. Messier 3, halfway between Bootes and Ursa Majoris, but actually located in Canis Venatici. Here we have another globular cluster. This one's in Bootes. It's an NGC study. NGC 5466, magnitude 9.1, so some 3 magnitudes, or about 16 times fainter. Half the size, 9.2 arc minutes in size, and unlike using the Messier catalog in the handset of the Gemini 2, we get an idea of what its brightest stars are, and their magnitude 13.8. This is the Lucis class globular cluster rating. It's a class 12, XII, 54,000 light years distant. Right ascension 14 hours, 5 minutes, 27 seconds, and declination of plus 28 degrees, 31 minutes, and 56 seconds. I will say I had to double the exposure time from 5 to 10 seconds to get even the view we are seeing here at this moment. Here we're going to have a view, we're having a view of a galaxy in Bootes, a fairly bright one. This is out of the Astro.Geekjoy Deep Sky Atlas. I have to say the sky right now is still got a bluish tinge to it, even though we're a couple of days after the summer solstice. The night sky doesn't tend to get bright dark enough to call it sky dark until about 10:15 to 10:30 in the evening. This is an excellent galaxy, as you can see. Magnitude 10.3, largest 5.9 by 4.5 arc minutes. I would say it has a bit of an annulus about it, bright core with an annulus. It is a class SB, capital B with a bar, BC, so 2.5 times removed from lenticular, 49 million light years distant. At right ascension, 13 hours, 37 minutes, 32 seconds, with a declination of plus 8 degrees, 53 minutes, and 8 seconds. This is a splendid view and probably does warrant a little bit more zoom, as we can see here. Superb study. Right now we're at 10-second exposure time, which certainly equivalates to that of at least a 24-inch scope, but we're not under perfect sky conditions yet. We have a partial moon. We just had looks like a satellite passage, partial moon, and we still have some sunlight in the upper atmosphere from sunset. We're now about to get our third stack of a 30-second exposure per stack image of NGC 5363. And now, for the first time, I'm really having to play with the histogram settings in order to balance the aesthetic with the amount of detail possible. You see several other galaxies in this field. Let's go on 5363. Do a little bit of a e-zoom to about what I assume is about 150x. 5363 is a 10.1 magnitude galaxy, 4.6 by 3.1 arc minutes. Spiral with a lowercase a, 50 million light years distant, with a right ascension of 13 hours, 56 minutes, 7 seconds, and a declination of 5 degrees, 15 minutes, and 16 seconds. And in a moment, I am going to step the exposure time back down to 10 seconds and turn. And yes, here we are having that 10-second exposure of NGC 5363, that 10.1 magnitude galaxy in Virgo. And here, of course, you can see NGC 5363 off to the left, with NGC 5364, another galaxy in Virgo. It's also known as 5317. Fainter, magnitude 10.5, 6.1 by 4.2 arc minutes. Larger, spiral with an uppercase B and a CP, so a very unevolved galaxy. A C-class, 3 times removed from lenticular with peculiarities. This galaxy is 56 million light years distant, right ascension 13 hours, 56 minutes, 11 seconds, and a declination of plus 5 degrees in 54 minutes. Let's go ahead and have a 30-second look at this pair. This is right after the second pass of NGC 5364 and 30 seconds exposure time. Notice the texture and the spiralicity in this, the very small core, extended core region with some spiral arms developing. Also notice we see this fainter, probably 12.5 magnitude galaxy off here in this direction. Quite a bit of extension on NGC 5364, none of which was perceptible at 10-second exposure time. The sky is just losing its color, but it still has some luminosity in it. Let's have another look at another galaxy. Here we're seeing a 30-second, probably 2-pass exposure so far of NGC 5846, a galaxy in Virgo. 10th magnitude, small, slightly smaller than the previous 10th magnitudes, 4 by 3.7 arc minutes. Unspectacular because it's an elliptical class O, basically a perfectly spherical, massive globular cluster, 79 million light years distant. Given its size, I'd say this one is probably about 100 distance and apparent size, probably about 100,000 light years in diameter, which is fairly large for an elliptical since they tend to collapse over time. We're at right ascension 15 hours, 6 minutes, 29 seconds, with a declination just above the celestial equator of 1 degree, 36 minutes, 19 seconds. And obviously, we had a true passage of a satellite, rather golden in color. There is no smoky texture in this baby. This is clearly a satellite, but let's go ahead and do a bit of zoomage and take this one right up to about 300x. We're starting to duplicate the stars here. I must have moved around a little bit. So that'll be our view of NGC 5846. All right, have a look at this. This is a globular cluster. I've had to spend a good deal of time with the histogram. Why? Because I'm doing a 0.2 second exposure. And this 0.2 second exposure at sky dark on this particular evening should approximate to the view you would get through a 6-inch scope. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of step through this a little bit. We're now operating at a magnification that's useful for globular clusters of about 150x. So let me go ahead and step through. As we triple, we're going to basically, if every 4 times, we're going to double the aperture. So we're going to go to about 0.8 seconds, maybe 1 second if it doesn't resolve to that. And we should get a view through a 12-inch scope on Messier 5, globular cluster, in Serpens, magnitude 5.7, about as large as Messier 3, 19.9 arc minutes, 24,500 light years distant, with a right ascension of 15 hours, 18 minutes, 33 seconds, and a declination just above the celestial equator, plus 2 degrees, 4 minutes, and 58 seconds. What we're seeing here is a view of Messier 5 at 1 second exposure time, roughly equivalent to that which you get at the eyepiece of a 12-inch scope, and we're seeing it about 150x or 50% zoom. A 5-second exposure time puts us pretty much in the 24-inch view, eyepiece view of Messier 5, and this is quite comparable to what I've seen through a 30-inch telescope in California near San Juan Bautista. So this is quite a nicely resolved view of 5.7 magnitude, 19.9 arc minute size of Messier 5, and we will find that most Messiers give great views at 5-second exposure time. Let's see if there's a few more that we might want to look at before we knock off and say carpe noctem. Okay, we're back up to 30-second exposure, and that's because I want to capture a faint 15.3 magnitude galaxy associated with the two earlier bright galaxies that we saw in the NGC series. This particular galaxy is NGC 5373 and will require some magnification to pick out. There are any number of faint galaxies in this field. We should be looking right about here, however. 5373 is magnitude 15.3, 0.5 by 0.5 arc minutes. This may very well be our study. Remember, we're operating at 30-second exposure times. The galaxy is a compact, which means it has yet to have been really fully identified in terms of its morphology. 526 million light years distant. It's at right ascension 1357.07, declination plus 5 degrees, 15 minutes, and 6 seconds. So I suspect this is our view of 15.3 magnitude. Could be in blue-violet, which means it should probably be more like 14.5, but assuming it is actually 15.3 magnitude, not a bad view, quite present, very bright core with an aura around it. Here we're getting a nice 150x view of NGC 5374, another galaxy in Virgo. We've had another satellite passage. Magnitude 12.5, 1.6 by 1.5 arc minutes. Some nice structured detail in this view. It's a spiral with a capital B and a lower BC, so it's got a bar and a BC. 196 million light years distant with nice texture, really bright core, extended core region with spiral arms around it. The core region doesn't seem to have much definition in terms of extension. So we basically got a nucleated core with a stellar appearing nucleus and an aura that extends around it with brightish and faintish regions comprising it. Very nice view. With a fainter galaxy, probably given this is 12.5, this is probably something around 14, and maybe even a 15th magnitude and some 16ths here on the screen. I could play with the histogram, but let's not. I am going to find one more study of interest, and then we shall call it an evening. Okay, to wrap up this evening, what we have here is NGC 5387, a galaxy in Virgo. Faintish, magnitude 13.9, but we are operating at 30-second exposure time. It is 1.6 by 0.3 arc minutes, so about a 5-to-1 aspect ratio edge on. Spiral the lowercase bc, which typically means multiple spiral arms, 232 million light years distant, puts this one at about 110,000 light years in diameter. We're at right ascension 13 hours, 58 minutes, 24 seconds, with a declination of plus 6 degrees, 4 minutes and 14 seconds. And with this view of NGC 5387, we shall say carpe